You know what's wild? I spent probably $300 last summer on citronella candles, those little clip-on mosquito fans, a bottle of that lemon eucalyptus spray that smells like furniture polish. Basically turned my patio into a mosquito defense budget line, and I still got absolutely shredded. Like I'm out there grilling for 20 minutes, and I come back inside looking like I have chicken pox. So I started digging. Not as some master gardener or botanist or anything, just a regular person who was tired of getting eaten alive and wanted to figure out if there was actually a plant that worked. Not the ones they sell you at the garden center with the little mosquito plant tags that do approximately nothing. I mean a plant that genuinely, scientifically keeps mosquitoes away. And I found it. American beautyberry. USDA tested, performs on par with synthetic DEET, grows wild as a roadside weed across the entire American South. This thing is so effective that the US military looked into it for field applications. Here's the kicker though, you will not find it at your local nursery. You won't see it at the big box garden centers. Walk down the mosquito repellent plant aisle and you'll get lavender, you'll get marigolds, you'll get those sad citronella geraniums that smell nice but do absolutely nothing. But the one plant with actual peer-reviewed research showing it works? Nowhere. And once I figured out why, I got furious. Because it's not that the industry doesn't know about beautyberry. They know. They just have zero incentive to sell it to you. Look, if you're sick of being sold plants that don't actually do what they promise, or worse, ones that just create more work for you, I put together my Autopilot garden. It's basically my cheat sheet for the plants that actually deliver without needing constant babysitting. No marketing hype, just stuff that works. You can find the link in the description below. Anyway, let me break down exactly what makes beautyberry so effective and why the garden industry would rather you keep buying those useless citronella candles. All right, let's get into it. American beautyberry. If you live anywhere in the South, you have almost certainly walked right past this plant 100 times without giving it a second look. It's a scraggly, loose-limbed shrub that grows in ditches, along forest edges, in abandoned lots, basically anywhere nobody's mowing. For most of the year, it just looks like a generic green bush doing its thing. But come fall, these clusters of bright purple berries wrap around the stems, and honestly, it's stunning. Like little jewels packed tight along every branch. Gorgeous for about 6 weeks. Then it drops its leaves and goes back to being invisible. Not glamorous. Not the kind of thing that ends up on a garden center poster. Just a tough, scrubby native plant that nobody thinks twice about. Until 2006, when researchers at the USDA's Natural Products Utilization Research Unit down in Mississippi decided to actually put it through proper mosquito repellent testing. They already knew that folk tradition in the South went way back. Farmers used to crush beautyberry leaves and tuck them under horse harnesses to keep biting flies away. That's not some internet myth. That's documented practice going back generations. So the USDA team figured, okay, let's see if there's real science behind the folklore. They isolated 2 compounds from the leaves, calicarpinol and intermediol, if you care about the chemistry. Then they ran standard repellent trials against serious mosquito species, the kind that carry dengue, malaria, the ones you actually worry about. And the results? These compounds performed on par with DEET. Not slightly better than a scented candle, on par with the synthetic gold standard that's been the go-to mosquito repellent since the 1950s. The researchers literally crushed fresh leaves, rubbed them on their skin, and mosquitoes would not land on them. That got published. A few science outlets picked it up, and then nothing. No product development, no nursery rush to stock it. The garden industry collectively shrugged and moved on. Now, let me ask you something. Why do you think that happened? Because it's not like the research was hidden. It's publicly available. Anyone in the industry could have read it. Here's what you need to understand about how the garden retail machine works. Think about it from a business perspective for a second. If you're running a big nursery chain or a garden product brand, your entire model depends on repeat purchases. Citronella candles burn down, customer comes back, buys more. Lavender croaks over winter in half the country, customer comes back in spring, buys a replacement. Those clip-on mosquito gadgets run through refill cartridges, customer orders another pack. It's basically a subscription model wearing a gardening costume. Now look at beautyberry. You plant it once, and it's there, permanently. It reseeds itself. It's native, so it doesn't need fertilizer, barely needs water once established, and pests leave it alone. You can propagate it from cuttings or just let the birds eat the berries and scatter seeds everywhere. One plant becomes 5 in a couple of years without you lifting a finger. And here's the real problem for the industry. You can't patent it. You cannot trademark a native species that's been growing wild since long before anyone thought to put plants in pots and sell them. There's no licensing fee, no proprietary cultivar to justify a premium price tag, no way to control the supply chain. So from the industry's perspective, why on earth would they give shelf space to a plant that customers only buy once, that multiplies on its own, and that can't be monetized with annual upgrades? They wouldn't. They'd rather sell you the 37th lavender variety, slap Mosquito Defense Lavender on the tag, and let you find out on your own 6 months later that it barely does anything. Because then you'll come back and try the next thing. And I want to be clear, I'm not sitting here in a tinfoil hat saying there's some grand conspiracy. I'm saying I spent real money on products that didn't work, got curious, started asking obvious questions, and realized the whole setup is designed to keep you on a treadmill of solutions that almost work, but never quite get you there. So you keep buying. Speaking of getting off that treadmill, if you want the full rundown on plants that actually do what the garden industry promises but rarely delivers, that's basically the whole point of My Autopilot Garden. It's my collection of plants that save you money because they work, they last, and they don't need you hovering over them every weekend. The link's down in the description if you're interested. Okay, so here's the good news. You do not need permission from any garden center to grow this plant. You can absolutely do this yourself, and it's almost embarrassingly easy. Option 1. Cuttings. If you know literally anyone in the Southeast who has a yard, there's a decent chance beautyberry is growing as a volunteer somewhere on their property and they don't even know what it is. Ask them for a cutting. Beautyberry roots from softwood cuttings like it has something to prove. Cut a 6-inch piece of new growth in late spring or early summer, strip the leaves off the bottom half, stick it in a pot of damp potting mix, and keep it in the shade for a few weeks. That's it. I've done this on my back porch in a dollar store plastic tray and gotten about 9 out of 10 cuttings to root. No rooting hormone needed, though it doesn't hurt if you have some lying around. Option 2. Seeds. Beautyberry seeds are dirt cheap online. We're talking $5 for 50 seeds, sometimes less. They do need cold stratification, which sounds intimidating, but really just means you put them in some damp sand in a plastic bag, stick the bag in your fridge for about 60 days, and then plant them in spring. You're basically faking winter so the seeds think it's time to wake up. Germination rates are decent as long as you're patient. Don't expect overnight results. Give them a few weeks. Option 3. Just buy the plant. Not from the big box stores, they won't have it, but native plant nurseries, the smaller regional specialists, they absolutely carry beautyberry. Expect to pay maybe $15 to $30 for a gallon-sized pot. When you compare that to the lifetime cost of citronella candles, mosquito misting systems, or whatever the next gimmick product is, the math is almost funny. Now, once you've got your plant, where you put it matters. The traditional way folks in the South have used beautyberry for generations is dead simple. You keep a bush near your back door or patio entrance. When you're heading outside, you grab a handful of fresh leaves, crush them between your palms, and rub that on your arms and legs. The oils come right out. Mosquitoes want nothing to do with you, and you're good for a couple of hours. It smells green, slightly herbal, maybe a little medicinal. Not bad at all. Way better than that chemical smell you get from DEET spray. Some people down south just snag a leaf on their way out the door like it's the most normal thing in the world, which, honestly, it is. If you want a more permanent setup, plant beautyberry around your patio or your main outdoor seating area. It gets about 4 to 6 feet tall and roughly the same wide, so it's substantial enough to create a real screen, but not so massive it's going to eat your yard. If you're planting several as a loose hedge, space them about 5 feet apart. And because beautyberry is deciduous, meaning it drops its leaves in winter, you might want to underplant with something low and evergreen for year-round visual interest. But in summer, when mosquitoes are the actual problem, your beautyberry is lush, leafy, and doing exactly what you need. Growing conditions? Almost anything. Part shade to full sun. Sandy soil, clay soil, loamy soil. I've seen beautyberry thriving right next to drainage ditches where the ground is soggy half the year, and I've seen it perfectly happy in dry, neglected corners. It's a native. It figured out how to live here long before we showed up to overthink things. Water it during the first season while it gets established. Then, honestly, just leave it alone. It doesn't want your help. Quick note on the berries. Birds go absolutely crazy for them, which is great for wildlife. They're technically edible for humans too, but they're astringent and not exactly something you'd snack on. Some folks make beautyberry jelly, which is apparently pretty good. I've never tried it myself. The point of this plant for our purposes isn't the fruit anyway, it's the leaves. And those leaves are pumping out mosquito-repelling compounds all season long. Okay, pause here for a second. I want you to really sit with this. If even a fraction of hobby gardeners swapped out one purely decorative shrub for a beautyberry, the mosquito-repellent product market would feel it. Because why keep spending money on stuff that barely works when you can grow a plant that actually does? But that information doesn't circulate. It doesn't get promoted. Because the people who make money selling you the solutions have exactly zero motivation to point you toward the one solution you only need to buy once. And it's not just beautyberry. There are dozens of plants like this. Regionally adapted, low-maintenance, genuinely functional plants that the nursery industry won't stock because they're too easy, too cheap, and too impossible to brand. The whole system runs on planned obsolescence and marginally effective products that keep you coming back season after season. Once you see the pattern, you really cannot unsee it. So here's what I want you to do this week. If you're in zones 6 through 10, look into getting a beautyberry. Check your local native plant nursery, search online, or ask around your neighborhood, because someone near you probably has one growing wild and would be happy to give you a cutting. If you're outside that range, start researching what native plants in your area have documented repellent properties, because beautyberry isn't the only one. Every region has plants like this that got overlooked in favor of whatever the garden center is pushing this season. All right, I want to hear from you. Have you ever grown beautyberry? Have you got another plant the industry pretends doesn't exist because it works too well and costs too little? Drop it in the comments. I'm putting together a whole list of these, and your experience is worth more than any marketing brochure. If this video changed how you think about what you're being sold versus what actually works, hit like so more people can find it. Subscribe if you want more of this kind of honest, no-nonsense gardening. And tap the bell so you don't miss the next one, because I've got more plants the industry doesn't want you to know about. Take care, and go grow something that actually earns its spot in your garden.